So, last but not least, our final panel of the day, evolving Amazon search strategy for 2026. So we're going to close this out by looking ahead to what's next. Logistics, I feel like if you've been with us through the day, you probably know all of this by now, but there are still people who always ask, will I get the slides and recording? And yes, you definitely will. Actually, all the slides are in the handouts tab. So if you want to download them now, feel free to do that while you're in the session, but we will also share them tomorrow to your email, the recording and slides. So feel free to go back and watch anything you missed. You can share with your colleagues. Make sure you go to our handouts tab. There's lots of resources in there. We have a great resource from Detail Page as well. Our chat, let's keep it active. It's been so active today, which has been great to see. So please ask questions. Don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you. And make sure to also join into our polls. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our panelists today. So Ryan, why don't you kick us off?
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Ryan Yamamoto. I'm a senior manager here with Commerce Media and Tinuiti. I'm working in our foundation pod. And I have been with Tinuiti for going on my 6th year now. So very excited, working primarily with Amazon Search Media and also DSP and all the other retail media networks. And I will pass it over to one of my good friends and counterparts, Ken Magner.
Thank you, Ryan. Hi, everybody. As Ryan mentioned, name's Ken Magner, senior strategist on the commerce media side here at Tinuiti, specializing in all things Amazon search, but also just leading high-level strategy for brands, mainly on the enterprise side of things here at Tinuiti. Really like to dig in on data, Excel, growing the business overall beyond just the search element, but how do we leverage search to really grow the business as a whole? And I will pass it off to Dan.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Dan Karchner. I'm the CRO of Detail Page. Super excited to be part of this with PackView and Tinuiti. I'm relatively new to Detail Page, but what we're doing is super exciting. I think it fits well into this conversation around AI.
And I think that leaves me. Hi, everyone. My name's Ann Harrell. I am the Director of Connected Product and Product Enablement at PackView. I've also been at PackView for coming up on 6 years. So Ryan, you and I are the same there. And all that time, I've been lucky enough to work with Tinuiti on a number of things. So very excited to jump in today and talk about how Amazon search is changing and what we'll see in 2026.
A lot of predictions, a lot to it. And I'm very sorry. I must have left you out of the WhatsApp group that we were all going to wear black on this. So I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I like standing out. So here I am.
Well, you're doing great. No. Well, let's get into it first. So, quick poll here too, and I'm seeing some of the answers come in. Are you using AI yet to inform any of your Amazon search strategy? Answers as I'm seeing them come in are a couple for yes daily, a few for planning to, and right now I'm seeing not yet. So it looks like the most right now, or okay, it's flipping between either yes daily or not yet. So it's either you're doing it or you're not. That's fair, right? I think that we're all kind of in that period where think about where we were maybe even a year ago, what AI was kind of talked about to be as one of our big bets for 2025, and then where we are currently for 2026, and it's only evolving and growing more. So let's jump into some conversation about that as well as just the rest of Amazon search. So for the very first question, I want to start with you, Ken, but for everyone, as consumers, myself included, new homeowner and got a baby on the way. So wife is adding everything to the cart. And we're using a lot of AI for that, even just to research. So as consumers are adopting AI more and more in the consumer journey, what do you expect for core search KPIs? How do you think those will trend and how do you think those might change?
Yeah, the biggest thing I'm keeping an eye on early is just pure search volume as well as how is it impacting CPCs. So we definitely really like to look at, use different tools to kind of pull in what specific search terms are growing in volume, declining in volume. Long term, I definitely do see traditional search to be on the decline, but you're not necessarily going to see a decline in competition in terms of like everyone bidding against those core keywords. At least in the short term, you definitely will not. So keeping an early pulse check on how your CPCs are kind of fluctuating in probably the front half of this year for sure, but then especially as we get more into tentpole season and then holiday season Q4, very close eye there. By the time we get to Q4 of this year, I'm fully expecting AI to have grown quite significantly, even year over year. I know it had a large boom last year as well. So CPCs are going to be a crucial part in maximizing your search dollars. So seeing how that search volume trend correlates with those CPCs is the biggest, and then long-term to conversion rates as well. As users are a little bit more intensive on what they're looking for, more specific long tail, your PDP content has to really be catered to that, and that's going to impact your conversion rates long-term as well. So those are the two biggest KPIs on search that I'm definitely keeping close eyes on.
I like it. Dan, would love to ask you as well. What do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. I think a key metric is organic search. If you're familiar with Detail Page, a big focus of what we're doing is making sure that brands have their search content dialed organically, because you're just going to spend more money if you don't have your content really optimized for organic search. So when you think of that, like in the world of AI, you're going to have discovery through AI, but they're looking for not only the content, but also the context of what's out there. So the better brands have content and context to allow to be able to be found in that search with AI will be key, I think, going forward in 26 and beyond. It's quite common that, as well as how are these products being found? Maybe they're being found on ChatGPT, but then they're going to Amazon to purchase it. We see that being a pretty small amount right now, like 2% of the time are they actually purchasing it right now on an AI search, like a ChatGPT. That will change as well. So possibly you have consumers who are coming to Amazon and they're not as non-branded. Maybe they're looking for something specific they already found through AI. So I think this is going to be something to watch, is how is the AI being used? Where are they finding the product? How are they landing on Amazon? And is your content and your context optimized so that it can be scraped by the LLMs?
I like that too, because it's not only just taking the typical search clicks, but also factoring in a lot more detailed page views into it. And additional thoughts?
Yeah, I think to build off of, what my co-panelists have said, we need to take a step back and think about how AI is fundamentally changing how we all shop. Historically, you would go to a marketplace to browse, right? You would go into Amazon and you would say, I'm looking for baby formula, which is probably something that you and your wife are doing now. And you would then kind of backtrack and do your research on the platform. Now, most people are using AI to skip that step. So they're coming to the marketplace knowing, if not the brand and product they're trying to buy, at least the type of product they're looking for. And they have more specifics in the way that they're searching. So I think what we're going to see is more folks searching branded terms, long tail keywords, and fewer of the category and browse terms. And so I think that, one, presents an opportunity to brands, as Dan pointed out, to optimize their PDPs for agentic search to make sure you're the one that they're finding when they're looking in ChatGPT. But two, it also means that those category terms are going to become more competitive. And as Ken called out, CPCs probably will go up as well. That being said, I think there is a silver lining to this, because while we're talking about the ChatGPTs, the Perplexities of the world, there are retail-led agents that are showing up, for instance, Rufus. And so while category searching within the typical search page might go down, I think we'll see a lot of that shift to the agentic solutions, which I know we're going to talk about in a little bit. So I'll leave some of the nuggets for that.
I love it. No, and like you bring up that good point about branded search and how I think that's going to affect the way that we want to look at that, where, typically for my team, new to brand on branded search terms was always a bit of a funkier idea, where now it actually might be something worth looking at a lot more, because maybe it still is new to brand on Amazon, but they are doing a lot of that research outside. Right. So I think it's an interesting way to look at that. That's going to take us directly into our next question. And I'll just start with you since we're chatting. What does that then mean for your search data, looking at it in 2026 compared to either 25 or 24 or any time prior?
I hate giving this answer, but I think it depends. It's still important to look at keyword searches, at the deep campaign analytics that you can see in platforms like PackView today, right? The kind of core KPIs, impressions, engagements, clicks, etc. But I think it's also important to take a bigger look at where your searches are coming from, and to zoom out to look at the full customer journey when you're doing your reporting. So while at PackView, we have those core reports that are going to look on the campaign level or the keyword level, I think if you can zoom out a little bit more and look at things like multi-touch attribution, look at your upper to lower funnel customer journey, and use tools like AMC, and even in some cases modeled estimates. Like at PackView, we have incrementality. That will allow you to understand beyond just that individual click or that individual search, how customers are getting in the funnel, and ultimately how you continue to grow the funnel overall.
I'll jump in here. I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of Ann and Dan's first question responses here a bit. With that research kind of going on, potentially more off Amazon, and they're coming in more informed. I believe Ann mentioned this about like more long tail. So Ryan, I'm going to use you in the baby example here. Maybe you learn that, hey, you want glass bottles. So you're coming in and you know out of the gate, you're not looking for plastic, you're looking for the glass bottle. So that's one where when I'm dissecting the performance data, I'm looking for more key themes and also some of that like Rufus prompt data, because those reports are now available, even though we can't technically pay for those. There are sponsored placements, so we are getting some of that data. So between the Rufus prompt data and actual search queries, not necessarily just the individual queries, but kind of themes within buckets that, hey, that can help inform some of those PDP content refreshes that I want to work closely with my operations team on, because at the end of the day, I want to maximize holistic conversion rate, not just my paid search side of things. And by leveraging that search data and kind of finding those little buckets that, hey, this is what the consumer is kind of going towards, let's make sure our PDPs are optimized for that long term.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think that was a great way to summarize it. And if you think about it in short, we're just saying to stop reporting in a silo. Search is important, but it's a piece of a greater whole. So look at the bigger picture. I think that ties it together nicely.
Love it.
Yeah,
Dan,
can I tack on there?
please.
So I think it's interesting when you look at Cosmo and these 15 areas that we know are being implemented within search around GEO. I think the thing I'm most concerned about when I talk to brands is how much they're missing the generative engine optimization piece of this, where they might have the right SEO keywords, but they're missing how it's being used, what it's being used with, who's using it, when they're using it. And some of those key indicators are really what that intent of the user is what customers are searching for. So like even within our tools, we'll map out or rewrite content for a brand, and then we'll underline everything that's contextual that has to do with GEO. So I think it's really important. And usually brands score super low in this area, and they think they've got their content dialed, but they don't have those contextual formats in there. And that's going to be the new age of search.
Yeah. Well, Dan, keeping you going then too on this, I'm glad that you brought up GEO. So let's talk about within Amazon Rufus, or using Amazon prompts. What are your recommendations for clients, sellers, vendors to actually be able to leverage, whether it's Rufus or other AI platforms within search advertising?
Yeah, with Rufus prompts, it's still so early to tell. Being in this beta stage, what we're seeing is probably 8 to 12% lift coming from this engagement style. So it's definitely something to watch from an agentic standpoint. This pivot from SEO to GEO is real, but most brands they're hearing about it. Everyone's talking about it, but they don't really know what to do about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to focus on conversational queries and what the intent of the user is. If you think of SEO today, I would say about 30% of customers pass in that range. And a big part of what we do at Detail Page is we're ranking how you do. Here's an assessment of your SEO, your GEO, and your AEO. AEO being agent, which is kind of like the new wave. If you look at GEO, they're typically less than 10% dialed. Like 8 to 9% is typically how many pass as far as their content is ready for GEO. It's less than 2% when you look at the AEO or the agent. And if we look at the future of Rufus and agent shopping, a lot of brands have a lot of work to do to have their content optimized for that. I love this quote. I wrote this down. This is from Doug Harrington. He said, we really haven't had a technology revolution as large as this since the start of the internet. I don't think we're fully aware or ready or even adapting to what this change could mean when you look at Rufus prompts and all agentic shopping.
A little scary to think about, but also probably true, right? And Dan, I want to ask you before I pass over to Ann, do you think there's is there any conflict at all in trying to, update any of that content for GEO while also trying to update it for organic search or any of the, typically prior ways that someone would go in there and try to update any of their listings or products?
I think obviously we just have character limits within the platforms you're shopping. So within Amazon, you got to make sure you're within the titles and the bullets and the descriptions with that content. But being able to optimize for both the SEO and GEO, it's just making sure you have those high keywords in SEO that you're captured. But there's no reason why if you know the right things to say that the customers are searching for, why you can't dovetail in both the SEO and GEO, hit the character limits, and get the best optimized result mathematically that you possibly could get.
Love it. Ann, passing over to you. Rufus prompts, how to actually use AI.
Well, those are three very big questions, but I'll start from the top. I would say, Rufus as an advertising tool is in its very early stages, right? There aren't all the bells and whistles that advertisers are used to having when it comes to optimizing within an ad format. I think that will change over time as Amazon releases more and more within Rufus. But that doesn't mean, advertisers should be resting on their laurels now and not optimizing for agentic, which is what Dan was referring to before, how you essentially optimized your PDPs and your landing pages on your D2C sites for SEO. Now you have to think about it from an agentic perspective. And though there are a multitude of ways that people use agents, I think the best thing that advertisers and brands can do is actually train their team on how to prompt so that they know how others are prompting. And then you incorporate that into your content strategy. I think we're going to see a lot more specificity in terms of what people are searching for. And so the keywords that you need in your title and your bullet points on your PDPs, they're going to be more long tail. They're going to be more specific. Additionally, I think it's important to think about how your products are differentiated, because that's what agents do really well is they highlight the differences in products. They highlight the differences in products that on the surface may seem similar. So making sure that you really understand your product, you understand your competitors, and you understand how people prompt, and then optimizing your content for those agentic searches to make sure that you're showing up, even if you're not at a stage where you can pay or boost yourself to the top when it comes to the agentic responses.
I like that idea of training for prompting. It's a very, I haven't heard it phrased that way, but no, I like that a lot. Ken, do you?
Yep. So when it comes to Rufus, my biggest thing right now is because we technically can't action on it from like a true sponsor product, sponsor brand standpoint at the moment, my biggest thing is staying very close on how that will look and what it will look like once that action becomes available. I want to be in there day one that I can actually go and build a campaign to showcase within Rufus. Is it technically going to live within a sponsored product or a sponsored brand, or will it technically become a net new ad type once it kind of rolls out? Will we be bidding on kind of contextual prompts contain this, or will we be bidding on very specific predetermined prompts on Amazon? All of that is still kind of the biggest questions out there that we firmly just don't know, because it's all in beta and we can't actually do anything but see reports. And the reports right now, every data point that I've looked at, they're all branded queries. So like, we're not getting much insight from like categorical related prompts. So there are some early nuggets there within those reports, but will that evolve with time? I would assume so, yes. And again, just kind of staying on top of this and being at the forefront of truly testing when the actionable parts do become available is something that I'm pushing all brands that I work with to be a part of. But again, really understanding again how you can do the bidding and at what level that kind of comes is also going to be very telling for just how we have to operate from a budgeting standpoint as well.
Yeah, the idea of how you want to segment your budget, just particularly to go after that. Let's get into another question then too. I like how we're going with this. And so let's see, you know what, Ken, we'll just keep you going. Whoever's going first is then you kind of going last. For AMC in particular, because we also want to think about budgets, and we've had AMC as a more recently unlocked feature within Amazon for so many more clients. Now they can use it a little bit more openly and freely. How do we expect that to change in 2026? What lessons have we learned from its more free to use 2025? What merit do we think there still is in running a lot of the Amazon defaulted AMC audiences versus only creating their own? What are we thinking for 2026?
Yeah. So overall, you should be using AMC. I know that was kind of spoken a bit on one of the last few panels here, but most people.
I'm glad we didn't immediately conflict something said prior.
And we immediately do typically think DSP with AMC, but the ability to leverage it in search is there. So last year, my biggest focus was I was trying to really understand how these audiences performed as kind of apples to apples as possible. So like I was trying to go in a baseline of, hey, here's a campaign with minimum base bids, maximum modifiers, because I wanted to maximize the spend to that audience within a given campaign so I can compare it against a campaign that didn't have the actual audience. And with that, I did typically see conversion rates were better. CPCs were a bit costly despite the lower base bid. So at the end of the day, you're kind of you pigeonhole a little bit when you go around that approach of trying to go solely into the audience. So to me, moving forward right now, I want to layer those audiences onto the wider search targeting that I can have. So something like an auto campaign where I'm not trying to pigeonhole into specific keywords or specific product targets. I'm kind of casting that wider net, but now I'm adding almost a qualifier for a specific audience that our brand is deemed relevant, that we kind of want to go after. And we're kind of now able to see that audience. How are they searching? What PDPs are they converting off of, for example? So that's, to me, kind of the next phase of how I'm trying to approach it. I'm not necessarily trying to segment those audience into this campaign has to be just for this audience. That was kind of a 2025. It was more net new on the modifiers. Now I really just want to make sure we're leveraging it to maximize the performance against those audiences. Again, and using the more broad targeting as a baseline, because you know you're adding a qualifier, to me makes the most sense here in 2026 for search.
Dan, for you, AMC 2026, how should we be using it now versus 2025?
Yeah, I remember first hearing about AMC. I spent several years at Pattern before I came to Detail Page. And I remember thinking at the beginning that when you look at like Amazon Marketing Cloud was like for data scientists in a clean room. It was, but now it's like the central nervous system of the marketing console within Amazon. I think I agree with Ken in the comments there. I think it's become sort of a must-have. Specifically, one thing I think is interesting is the changes made in late 25 around extended views, where you now have access to data that goes all the way back for longer view data to understand seasonality, to understand trends, where I think we'll see a shift more to lifetime customer value and customer acquisition cost and less around ACoS. So I think from my chair and where I sit, it's a lot of how do we help our brands that are really seasonal. And there's so many brands out there that are probably watching this. And I know brands that we work with, their search changes by the holiday. It changes by the season. And I mean, we have a lot of candy clients where it's a different search term when you're looking at Valentine's versus Mother's Day versus Christmas. And so I think there's a lot of data that allows for long-term views and seasonality, as well as just that year-over-year performance and how it can be more actionable. So those are my thoughts, as I'm not in the weeds with AMC, but I think we'll probably treat that.
Yeah, and I think definitely when you no longer required to have SQL, knowledge and skills to be able to use it, definitely open it up to everybody. And being able to pull back more of the long-term access and data with it, I think is a huge piece. And what do you think?
Well, you teed me up perfectly there with the no longer needing SQL thing, because I will start out by echoing my co-panelists in that I think AMC is crucial. I think regardless of if you're doing search and display, just search, all of the above, AMC helps you understand the customer journey on Amazon more so than any tool in the history of Amazon. It allows you to have kind of a closed loop system where you're seeing the analytics, you're creating the audiences, you're targeting the audiences in various places, you're refining, and you're going back to the analytics. So I think it's a super powerful tool. To your point, though, for a very long time, basically since its creation, it's been there's been a very high bar of entry because of the SQL, right? Because you need data analysts or you need people who understand SQL to be able to access most of the insights. That's why I have to do a little shameless plug here. PackView created our templatized version of AMC, where we have basically plug and play templates where you can pull out insights and you can also create audiences. That being said, while those are widely used and we see a lot of success with them across the advertisers who use them at PackView, it still limits you to the templates, right? To the use cases that we've determined based on our best practice are valuable. And so something that we've been working on, and I think it ties well to the start of our conversation, is actually using agents to write SQL code for you. We have an agent in beta currently that allows you to basically input plain language, say, I would like to view X, Y, and Z, and it creates a code for you that you can then show in PackView and templatize in PackView. So I think you'll see a lot more of this in the industry, right? We're democratizing the AMC data, removing that kind of bar that prevents folks from using the data to its fullest, which means that my prediction for AMC in 2026 is that there won't be one way to use it. Folks are going to find the most interesting ways to use it, the ways that allow them to understand their goals more robustly. And those goals are going to be unique to them and their strategy. And I think that's great. I'm very excited to see it happen.
Well, I want to say shout out to Jenny. I'm glad that you're a big fan of AMC Activate section of PackView. So yeah, definitely, if you're using it, check that out. And then also too, I've noticed even just in the Amazon ad console, so many new, KPIs being added, right? Such as, long-term ROAS or long-term ACoS. To echo one of your points, Dan, like I think that's going to be a bigger metric to be kind of looking at and analyzing. And so moving on to another question then too, in terms of new features that have been rolled out in Amazon, as they are always going to continue to do, sponsored product video, update to a typical, classic bread and butter ad type, a new rollout in 2025. What have we learned from sponsored product video? Do we like it? Do we dislike it? What are we thinking about it in 2026? And we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think video in any form is more important than ever for advertisers. If you think about platforms like the rise of platforms like TikTok, an entire audience is used to shopping in that kind of shoppable video format. And so I think Amazon is responding to that by making more of the placements video enabled. What this means is that you'll have to obviously have more video content on hand. This is partially where Gen AI will come into play. It also means you have to figure out how to talk in a more organic way to your consumer. It's not just the product listing information. On the whole, we've seen mixed results in terms of the ad format in and of itself, right? It's not the traditional sponsored product placement that we're used to seeing, but I think we're going to continue to see Amazon and other marketplaces roll out video-enabled placement to respond to the TikToks of the world, the Metas of the world. And so I think that we're going to see this grow in 2026, and potentially we're going to see counterparts across the Amazon search marketplace.
Nice.
I'll echo Ann there, just in terms of big fan of video, just content as a whole. Anytime I can use video, I'm always going to be all for it. It's just an engaging medium within advertising. It's way better than the static images that like a sponsored brand used to have. I know we'll get to some sponsored brand stuff here in a little bit. But all in all, sponsored product video, I am a fan if you have the assets that you should 100% be leveraging, because it's essentially a free add-on to a sponsored product campaign. It doesn't cost you any more. It's basically just you tie it to an ASIN within a sponsored product campaign. So if you have the assets, you should be using them. And with that, it is a bit laborious right now in terms of how Amazon has it set up, and also just some of the specifics to what the videos need to speak to. They're different from a sponsored brand video, for example. So from just like a pure how you create the video, what the video speaks to will differ. No audio speaks more to a product as like a use case of the product to a degree. So you do definitely need to customize the videos for these. And because you have to do it at every single campaign level, at every single ASIN level, there's going to be brands out there. I'm thinking something like an apparel brand. You're not going to be able to add this to every single ASIN and every single campaign. So it's definitely prioritizing your top spenders in that regard. So just being mindful of some of those kind of labor-intensive pieces from the upfront builds. Definitely prioritize where it should be leveraged if you have a large catalog or if you have a large amount of campaigns, but definitely leverage if you have the assets available.
Dan?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. I tuned into the session with Illy where Carrie had mentioned that video was king. And I think any advertisers realize the importance of video. Sponsored product video, I think, went from a nice to have beta to probably the most efficient way for CTR, especially in crowded categories. And so if you're a brand out there, you're in a crowded category, you're trying to sell creatine or whatever it is, where it's like it's just super crowded, it's probably something that you should be on top of. And I agree, especially if you have good content. However, I think it's important to note that sometimes you think of these campaigns that are expensive before you start dumping money into the campaigns. Are you actually optimized still for your organic? I think brands trip over dollars to make dimes sometimes, and they're simply missing indexing on their organic search. You would look at their images and they're not mobile ready, they're not conversion ready, and yet they're dumping money into video. But you go to their carousel and like their standard stuff is not ready to convert. So I think I just say that as a side note is although video is important, don't ignore the basics of how once you go advertise, how you're going to drive traffic there that's going to convert. And so I think getting those things first, focusing on the B terms and other areas, but making sure that all those keywords in your images, your A+ content, your enhanced content are readable and glanceable in a mobile format. You got to remember most people out there buying your products are looking at a 6-inch screen, and it's like, are you ready for that? That is what I would ask first.
I'm glad that you brought that up because, yeah, if you don't have the operational excellence in the beginning, you can drive all the traffic through the trendy ad, but if they're landing on a page that just doesn't have all the right information, looks terrible, definitely focus on the foundations before you go into all the new fun, trendy things. I'm really glad that you brought that up because I've definitely seen that as well, where we'll have clients that really want to chase the next new thing, but there's so many other things we have to get sorted and be ready for first. So really, really critical message there. I also want to ask an additional question for all three of you, just when it comes to content. Do you feel like there's any in 2026 that there's going to be any customer fatigue to AI generated content? Is there, I think even post Super Bowl, we saw some backlash to certain ads. And so I know that Amazon's pushing their AI ad generator where it's, if you don't have the content, they'll create it for you, et cetera. We've seen clients have success with that, but it's also still so fresh and new.
Yeah.
Do we think as the year goes that we're going to start to see a decline?
Maybe I can jump in on that. I do think we'll get to a point where AI generated content is more and more used. What we're seeing most clients in our portfolio, most of them they want the content FPO images. They're like, this is what the image should look like. And then I'm going to give it to my creative and my brand team to go sign off it and go create it in a similar fashion. But they just want that content that says you need a picture that shows indoor and outdoor use and have these words on your picture. Now go create this. Here's an idea of what it should look like and make sure the person doesn't have 6 fingers. And so, but I do think as it gets better, you're going to see more and more brands just like publish the thing. Because some of this stuff is getting so good.
I think it's also important to note where the AI content is showing up. So I do think that there's going to be a fatigue response to the amount of AI generated content that's been released, primarily because a lot of it is pretty bad and pretty noticeable. But I think you're going to see more of that on platforms like TikTok and Meta, where people are pushing back on that long form video content. When it comes to a marketplace, I think people are more comfortable with AI generated content, and often they're shorter videos or still images, in which case the AI can do a better job. And so I think what we're also seeing, and you mentioned this, is that a lot of larger global brands are using it not to completely create content, but to tweak it. So you need to add in a seasonal background. You need to change the color. You need to change the language that the content is in. All of this can be AI enabled, meaning you can take something that your creative team made and it meets your brand standards, but then you can tweak it so that you're reacting and responding to seasonal trends and changes. So I think we'll see more of that. We'll still see more AI content, but I think we'll see more of it on the marketplaces and less in the upper funnel and discovery platforms.
Yeah, just to jump in, piggyback off some of this, I think the biggest thing is the insanely obvious AI ones that will definitely see your fatigue, Ryan. I do think, to Dan's point, as the generation becomes stronger and stronger, and to Anne's point, when it's used more subtly, the consumer, it's just going to become kind of background where the consumer's honestly going to probably forget about it if it's so good in quality. So to the fatigue piece, yes and no. It all depends on the pure output of what is going in front of consumers. And again, the very obvious AI stuff will definitely get fatigue. I know as soon as I see one of those, I just move on. Like if your PDP's got a image that is clear AI, I know I'm personally just kind of moving on. It's not one that I'm too interested in, but it is definitely one that I'm sure there's been plenty of pages I've been on that I didn't even realize it was an AI image.
Yeah, and I liked Anne's answer too when it comes to the short term versus long, short form versus long form version of it. Dan, I want to shoot a question your way too.
Real quick on that though, the product they have to get the product right. Like I was with a brand this week where they sell underwear and bras, and like there were some amazing AI images that we created, but the product wasn't quite right. And so if the logo is not right, the product's not right, no one's going to ship that. And so until you can train the LLMs to actually say this is the right product, and it doesn't only look like a great image, it's the right product, and the logo is right, and the content looks right. So I think we'll get there, but it's not quite there.
Love all that. And again, let's keep it going. I want to ask you a question about, as you mentioned in the beginning, organic versus sponsored placements. How do we want to have that balance? How are we thinking about investment on particular targets where, we're already winning high organic rank? Do we still think in 2026, if we're already winning organically, that we still need to be investing in those keywords to maintain our paid sponsored placement? How do you see us, especially with AI and whatnot, really treating that organic versus paid balance?
Yeah, I think that offensive defensive strategy is important. I think the important question is around incrementality. If I turn off this keyword, how much revenue am I going to lose? And I think as you focus on not cannibalizing and just you think you're getting attribution or ROAS after going after these keywords, and you're really not. You're just cannibalizing where you can maybe spend that elsewhere. I would focus on where you can win organically and be really strategic about that. And just because your ROAS looks good doesn't mean you're spending it wisely there. Focus on B terms and put those in, like, you might put your A terms in all of your content. Make sure that they are there in your bullets, your descriptions, especially your top 2 or 3 bullets in your title. But maybe put those B terms in your hidden special, and then go advertise on some of those B terms and make sure you know what they are, that they aren't as expensive, and you can win them instead of paying rent on them. And once you start winning them, you'll become more relevant on maybe those keywords that are more expensive that you simply are just paying rent on.
I love that, win them instead of paying rent on them. And
Yeah, I love that as well. And I think that's a great tie-in, because what I was going to say is this is exactly why we launched our incrementality console, because we understand that brands and agencies need to answer more complex questions. The attribution that's provided by the retailer doesn't give you the full story. And essentially, our incrementality console uses a machine learning model to say whether or not an ad placement was just present in the customer journey or if it actually drove that sale. And it helps you understand at what point you need to be spending, what keywords are driving more of that incremental growth over time. But I also get to answer this in one of my favorite ways and say it's all about balance. Because at the end of the day, we think incremental spend, non-incremental spend, right? Incremental is good, non-incremental is bad. And that's not always the case, because there are scenarios where you do kind of have to pay rent, to use your phrase again, Dan. You need to be defensive in certain areas, and you have to spend on certain keywords and placements, knowing that it's maybe not driving incremental sales, but it's protecting existing customers. And so I think that's where it gets really important to do keyword research, understand your traffic, understand your competition, and highlight certain terms and placements that are must win for you and that you're willing to be a little inefficient in. And in those, just take a little bit of a hit to your incrementality over time.
Dan had probably one of my favorite lines of this entire panel, and he said, just because your ROAS looks good doesn't mean you're spending wisely. Anyone who knows me, I am not a ROAS guy in any means. I like to look at the business as a whole. So I like to track if I'm spending on certain queries. To me, the organic versus paid, I'm always going to get down to the query level, because not every search query is created equal, and you're simply going to rank organically differently for every search query. So it's one of those that I'm going to dig into that data at the query level, and I'm going to start to see, hey, if I'm scaling spend or if I'm pulling back on spend, is this product seeing an actual lift or decline in total revenue? So I'm looking at things like tacos. I'm looking at things like total cost per acquisition for units for that given product. And a couple tools I'm also using just for some measurement purposes. I love PackView's SOV tool for starters, because that's for getting an understanding of, okay, if I'm tracking a set of keywords, I can view my top of search organic visibility versus paid. So I might know out of the gate that these queries, I already have a strong organic placement, or I don't. I just have that information by using that SOV tool in PackView. And then a more recent release for those in Vendor Central, it's one that there's search query performance data in the back end of several Vendor Central accounts I've been in. It's not in every single one, but it's definitely a great tool where you can drill down to the specific query, and same concept where I can now track if I'm scaling spend up or down, what is the actual purchase percentage for my brand tied to that query with time. So those are the types of deeper dives where I'm marrying search data with holistic business data to really ensure we're understanding what we're doing is having a holistic impact.
I love that. And I have to flag that we actually use share of voice data in our incrementality model. So that brings it full circle here. Share of voice is definitely the bedrock of a lot of PackView functionality. And I think it is a great tool to look at if your goal is to protect your brand's voice within a marketplace that's as competitive as Amazon.
I love that we're using the PackView share of voice tool and plug in all the features, like let the people know. Okay, so as we're coming up, we got 5 minutes left, I believe. So next question, final question I have before we just kind of open it up too. Anne, we'll start with you. Updates to sponsored brand as an ad type. Another, again, been a bread and butter ad type for a long while, seen a lot of success. They've had their product collection, video, etc. now as they're updating it to no longer require having a custom image, hopefully making that a little bit more accessible for people and able to transition it through seasons easier. And also being able to show more than just 3 products in a product collection ad. I think as it's rolling out, I believe it's up to possibly 10. How do we feel like this update to the ad type is going to change things at all in 2026?
I mean, I think if anything, what we're seeing is Amazon is simply optimizing sponsor brand for what it's really good at. For a long time, we talked about sponsor brand as a brand builder, and in a way it is, but in reality, it's still in the search results, right? And most people are not finding brands in the search results, especially in the agentic future. But what it does a really good job of is showing more of your brand to people who are already exposed to it, or helping you highlight more of your comparable products for people who are searching for competitors. And so I think what we're seeing is a movement away from the lifestyle imagery that typically comes with like true brand building media, and a focus on catalog building, where you are able to show more products, you're getting people invested in more of your portfolio, you're increasing LTV with customers who maybe are already interested in purchasing from your products. And so I think it's just optimizing sponsor brand for what it's really good at. I think also to tie it back to the video example, what you're seeing, in my opinion, is kind of like the scroll carousels that we're all used to on social media. People, again, are trying to kind of mirror what the younger audiences are used to seeing. And so that's what the multiple products will mirror, is that carousel experience. So I think it's a good thing. I think we'll see stronger results from sponsor brand. And I think it will help people focus their tactics and strategies when using that specific ad type.
Yeah. And I can think about that too, just from a social media perspective, where if you are seeing the ad pop up for whatever it happens to be, and it's letting you know you're looking at product number 3 out of 15, there is that inkling of like, I might as well look at all the other ones that are going to show up there too. So Dan, similar question to you, sponsor brand, as it's changing, how do we feel like it's going to evolve this year?
Yeah, I agree with Ann on the video and the social TikTok side for sure. It's I think one thing is with Amazon now displaying the images that are pulled directly from the listing, it does simplify the creative workflow. So it makes it a little bit simpler there. I don't know if I have a lot more comments on that. I think on a side note, when you think of the top three images now are being indexed by LLMs. And so when you think of images as part of this conversation of AI and this sponsorship, I think it's important that we know that even though it might not be happening like for general discovery, as customers are going down the purchase path, the LLMs are now scraping those images as well. And so having those images on your PDPs that are being funneled in, it's important that they have that those images are good.
Absolutely. And then Ken, quick thoughts on that before we just open it up?
Yeah, I was just say not much to add that the other two haven't already said. So I'm actually just going to bounce to the chat. I see Jenny has a question there, so just know we're short on time. I will grab that. But bouncing off conversation points about overall business health, is there a healthy percentage of total revenue that's attributed to ads, and is there a percentage that might trigger some alarms in your mind? So to echo Ann from earlier, I hate this response, but it definitely does depend here. It is one that, to me, at the end of the day, it's going to depend on your current standing in terms of where you are revenue, but also what your goals are as a brand. So if you're looking to grow 10%, 15% versus maybe say, I want to grow 30, 40%, those numbers might drastically change, honestly. At the end of the day, your organic presence is going to play a big role here. So if you're in a very competitive space and there's a lot of just 2 or 3 big name brands that are going to dominate organic, you are likely going to just simply have a higher percentage of your sales coming from the paid side of things, because it is very much a pay to play for you. So I don't want to use the cop-out answer that it does depend, but that's definitely one, Jenny, if you want to connect on LinkedIn, happy to chat a little bit more there with some more specifics.
Yeah, I think a good way to summarize that is 100% would be concerning. That would send off flags. Everything below that is subjective. It really depends on your budgets and your appetite for risk. If you really want to push, you can get a high percentage of your revenue coming from ads, and you'll see growth. But the only way that growth is going to continue is if you keep spending. So you really have to weigh your budget, your goals, your appetite for risk. And I would suggest getting as far away from 100% as you can.
Dan?
Yeah, I don't think we have any more comments on that one. So
Easy. And I would say with that too, like from my side, also when you're looking at it, be aware of how that might evolve and change. where there isn't just one answer to say like, hey, at the end of 2026, it's going to be the same every month. Definitely keep an eye on how that evolves and adjust accordingly. Oh, but I see Catherine up here, so I think we're getting kicked off.
No, you're not getting kicked off. I just thought we were close to the end and I didn't see any more questions, but maybe I missed something.
No, unless anyone else has anything, by all means.
Yeah, I have a quick comment. Anybody out there who's watching, we're happy to do a detail page free assessment. If you're interested to know how your GEO is ranking, no strings attached, just send a note to sales@detailpage.com and we'll just run through your ASINs and let you know how they're doing.
That's a great offer and you should take him up on that. Awesome. Well, that's it for today. Really want to give a huge thanks to our panelists, all of the speakers who were on the sessions before. They do a lot to pull all of this content together. So just really appreciate all of them. Hopefully you are all walking away with clear, practical takeaways around search strategy and where AI is actually making an impact. And we are going to be back next Wednesday on the 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern. We've got 4 really strong retail media sessions lined up. We are going to kick things off with agentic commerce. I have seen the deck and it's definitely worth your time. It's some really cool stuff in there. So make sure you come. Hope to see you all there. Thanks everyone. Thanks to our audience. Love the engagement. There's so many good questions, comments. So really appreciate that. All right.